Okay. First mistake. Already. See there, man. What's up, peeps? This is George Teague, man. It is a great night to be with us here. I am so excited about this conversation we're going to have tonight and another one we're going to have in a couple weeks. But first, I need to give a quick shout out to the Lantern Grill and Pub in Plano, Texas, located 6205 Coit Parkway, Court Road, and I'm always there on Wednesday night shooting the show. They do a great job of hosting me and allowing me to come out there. So make sure you guys go by there, grab yourself a drink, grab yourself some food, say what's up to Calvin for me, and really join the family there. Make sure you subscribe to YouTube as well. Like this page. This is a great source just to have some fun and listen to some great content. Bigger and new things are coming your way as well. So share it with a friend, a family member, co-worker, or maybe even a 49er fan. I guess we do that. JT will not be with us tonight because he is at a coaches clinic essentially for JP2 football team. He's a defensive coordinator there now, and so they're planning getting their stuff ready because they start practice on Monday. So I'm left here to run this show tonight. I've already made my first mistake, and I apologize. So I'm telling you, I have not been the producer. I am not the producer. JT is the producer of the show. He works all these screens and all the chats and all this other kind of stuff. So I apologize in advance for any mistakes that I may make. All right. So we'll have two guests on. I didn't want to try to hide them now because I know I would have messed it up. The first guest that I'm going to have with us tonight is this gentleman that you see on your screen. It is Coach Art Abreu. Man, he is. You got to love this guy for a lot of different reasons, right? He's a high school football coach, a head coach at Taos High School in New Mexico, won state championships there. He has done a lot of great things that I've been really, really close to the program, and I absolutely love it. He's been a college coach, so I thought this would be interesting for him to, I get to hear both aspects of how he thinks about it as a high school coach and as a college coach. Like I said, he's a friend. The only downside is that you can see behind him, if you're watching it on YouTube, is that he's a 49er fan. I forgive him, but that's what it is. But his wife Chloe is a tremendous person, so I can forgive him for that. At 8:35, Tom Lemming is going to be coming on. Tom Lemming is a high school football recruiting analyst. I'll give more of his introduction to him a little bit later. So thank you guys for joining in for the show tonight. We're going to jump right into it. So this topic that we want to talk about, because a lot of people hadn't even really heard about it, it's the Prep Super League. The Prep Super League. It is a high school spring football league that is coming to about 8 different states, 12 cities. So let me tell you about it if you don't actually know what it is, and then we're going to get in discussion and kind of talk about this a little bit. So it was founded by Brian Woods. Brian Woods is going to be on our show in 2 weeks. He was supposed to be on the night, but he's going to come in on August 9th. He apologizes because he had a little bit of flight issues that he had to deal with. But this is a league for, I'm going to say elite football players, and I don't want to speak on his behalf because I want Brian Woods to really be able to talk about it. But he has also said it's not only for those. So think of it more like AAU, basketball, baseball, softball, or something where people can actually pay a little bit of money to be in those leagues. So it is somewhat like AAU. All right. There's going to be 12 teams in these major markets: Houston, Dallas, Cleveland, New Jersey, San Francisco. Yeah, I had to say it again, didn't I? San Diego, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Miami, Tampa, Atlanta, and New Orleans. All right. So it's not all over the country, just in those big, large markets. It's going to be a six week season. It's going to be 11-on-11 football, so not 7-on-7. 7-on-7 start popping up was kind of like AAU, but this will be a season where they travel and they play against people in other states. So but they would still be members of their own school. So think of it just like AAU when we're talking about this. Okay, that's very important. I think that we remember. Um, they do say that this is going to be a league where it's going to help develop and grow players' brands. So let's keep that in mind too. We're talking about marketing, NIL deals, things of that nature, looking more like college, and play by NCAA rules. And again, it'll be a April through May league. You're saying 6 weeks worth of it. Okay, so let's start with those principles as we get ready to go into this. If you guys want to get in the chat too, when you guys hear, or if you guys have anything you want to say, please put it up there. All right, so Coach, just when I first just started talking about that, I know you're not in one of those markets, but as a football coach, what are your first reactions come to mind for you when you hear about this new type of football league?
Well, my first thought goes to me being a New Mexico high school coach. Sounds great because we don't have spring football here. So for a league to be out here for 6 weeks, or the chances to play for an additional 6 weeks in the springtime, sounds tremendous to me. Now you look at it through the cities that they're located in; those cities have spring football, and I can see how that's going to tear away some quality time from their head coaches and stuff. And with the AAU, pay to play thought process, it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to really play out. If I read it correct, these student athletes would only be able to play on these teams if they initially enroll in it in middle school, if I'm correct. So they're really going to have to really get some addresses down and see what they're going to have to do to make sure. I don't know about it called legit, but make sure everything's copacetic and everything. With all the kids that they're going to be targeting and stuff.
Yeah, now I do have to. We'll make sure we ask them that because I did read something about that. I hadn't heard that much about the middle school piece. I
Yeah.
do know that in some of the preliminary conversations I've had with him, it was really not necessarily that you had to start there. It was just that you needed to be in that area, meaning if they're going to have a team in Dallas, you can't come from New Mexico and
Yeah.
play on the Dallas team. You got to be somewhere in the metroplex, or more like a charter school
Yeah.
mentality than or a private school. That there aren't really boundaries, but there's a closer net, right?
Yep.
So you could have a guy on your team from, I don't know what all the schools in your area, but just imagine putting together an all-star team of, of the kids around that you play against.
Yeah.
Um,
And all northern New Mexico team, that'd be pretty cool.
yeah. So, and that's essentially what they would be doing here, saying, hey, if you live, so in my market, I live in McKinney. We're close to Frisco, Prosper, Allen, Plano, Carrollton, Louisville, all those little areas where it's not very, very far to drive.
Right.
Um, so if you have the mentality again of the AAU stuff, you could just drive over, practice with them, go play in the game on the weekend, your travel squad,
Yeah.
and come on back home, go to school, right?
They said
But
something about having like 2 practices a week or something like that, and then meeting up on the weekends. That'd be interesting.
I don't think, I personally don't think that could happen. I don't
Okay.
see how that could happen. That's me again. I don't see how you could come to my spring football practice because you're going to have to practice after school in this league. It's like the AAU stuff. So
Right.
if you go to football practice and then we practice after school sometime, I don't know how you could go to a full-fledged practice and then go to another one. Now that just means they'd have to be practicing late, I would assume. You know,
That'd be practice.
so the problem becomes, and this is what I would ask you as a coach, pretend you're in any one of these markets. Um, do you think kids will try to choose and opt out of their high school
Yeah.
spring to go be in this where they can go play with top notch guys and go travel? You see
I,
something?
I I believe so. I mean, just with me being here in New Mexico, I mean, we have a D4 program that takes away some seventh graders from our seventh and eighth grade middle school program, and they choose just solely just to stick with YAFL. And, and that's just here in New Mexico at seventh grade. Now, I think, especially if you're looking at marketing and NIL money and you're looking at all the different things other than just playing football, I think these kids start weighing it out and seeing like, what, these are the pros and cons of playing high school football in the fall time versus the Super League in the springtime. I mentioned this to you before we got in the areas. This could be the fixing of the running back NFL market deal. You know what I'm saying? And not really fixing. They're saying like, hey, you know what? I'm young once. I'm going to get my money now that I can get it. I'm going to get it since I'm a sophomore. I believe that's what they're trying to target, is sophomores. I can start making money since a sophomore, junior, senior in high school, make X amount of dollars by 6 digits worth or more, go to college on that same NIL deal, hopefully make a few more millions, have some money stacked. So when I do go pro, and if I'm a running back and I get the franchise tag at 10 million, it's not that big of a deal. But hopefully by them doing this, it could maybe fix a few things. But I mean, I see kids start picking and choosing where and who they play for. Oh, the fall coach. I mean, I don't know. They're 4 or 5 star recruits, so they don't even have to worry about playing time and stuff like that. So it just really being, weighing it out. Where am I going to go? Is it too much football? Is it, am I making my brand bigger by playing both seasons, one season, or just strictly spring?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's a very interesting take. You're saying that it's a way to capitalize and maybe earn some additional income. Now, there are some parameters. There are some other concerns I think that they would have to be considering, is that NIL is not legal in all of these states that currently that they're thinking of. I know in Texas it's not. I think that it is in New Mexico that you can
Yeah,
actually have. But it is not legal in Texas. It is not legal in Georgia. Um, it is in Louisiana. It is in New Jersey, um, California. Did I say that already? Um, but anyway, there's some states that aren't ready for that yet. So I don't know how that's gonna play out initially.
mm-hmm.
Do I personally think that the NIL for our high school players is going to happen probably in all 50 states? Yes. I mean, there's 30 states that have it already. I don't see why everybody won't get it. Probably the more conservative states that probably don't have it. I don't know. So I think there could be a little bit of issue when we're talking about what hurdles may they have in the beginning. Is if you're in Texas, what incentive will you have to come over there if you can't take part in this company? So they had a company that was, they said they had associated with them. I have not done any research. This is just
Yep.
something for you guys to look up and do it. But it's basically no cap, NOCAP. I have no idea what that stands for. Uh, no cap sports is a big partner for them, and apparently they do a lot of collegiate NIL deals
I've heard
right
that.
now. And they are looking to partner with this so they can come on down to the high school pieces. So I know there's a lot of talk about that and how they're going to work into that piece. So it could be interesting there. Coach also spoke about the, what age group will they target? Is it younger age? Is it not? I think it's going to be all kind of pieces that are deciding, like you say, what will they want to play. So for those of you that follow football pretty heavily, particularly in Texas, there was a guy here in our area that sat out his senior year from South Lake, which is a very big, powerful football program here. And he sat out because he could go ahead. He had to sit out so he could grab his NIL deals. And I think he was making like $1 million before he got to college because he was going to the University of Texas. So um, it, I think you could have juniors or you could have people playing freshman year, sophomore year, even playing their junior year, but then playing the spring of the junior year in this league and not going back and playing for the high school league like he did, but go ahead and start capturing money and play a traveling schedule at the same time. So it could be uh, something like that. So let me tell me as a coach though, if you were thinking about that, what does that really do for a coach to be able to say, maybe you got this stud, or maybe he's not even a stud, just some contributor to your team is like, man, I'm gonna sit out, or I'm gonna do both. I'm not gonna come to spring. I don't know. There's so many different ways it could go from a player's perspective. So,
I mean, you always try to preach team, 24/7, 365. But then again, you're not in that position, where these young athletes are at now, to where everything is just, at their fingertips. NIL, a bit bigger and broader marketing avenues. And I mean, it's just, as a coach, you go into your seasons, either fall, spring, and you're trying to piece together your rosters and stuff. This is what I want for development for little Joe here, and you're trying to bring out the best in them. But then again, you're going to miss out on that springtime potentially if he goes and plays this spring league, or he's on the spring roster. He goes through spring practices, and what if he gets hurt during those spring practices and is not able to fulfill those AAU duties that I don't know, Georgia's going to be, Kirby Smart's going to be at that one day just to go look at a group of kids. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It's tough. And when you brought it to my attention today, at first, I was like, well, marketing, and I went down the spiel of, because I don't have spring ball here. I mean, you got to look at it. Why is football only played once a week? And I mean, you could attest to this. Just the way the body it feels after football games, either if it's NFL, NCAA, or high school. I mean, what are we doing to these bodies right now? What are they choosing to do to themselves throughout these seasons? Because regardless of if it's AAU, YAFL, football, depending on age, football's football. At the end of it, there's hard work and wear and tear that goes into it just to get ready for a game, for a season, for a practice. So I'm wondering how much can the body can handle. And
well, so we're going to come back to that in just a moment, because we got another guest coming in. I want to get him in because he is on the road. But I also wanted to point out to Craig Young, thank you for putting that up, because you mentioned something about MTV and two-a-days and highlighting stuff. That is exactly what they're going for. You need to remember this is a for-profit deal, and they feel like they will be able to have TV rights for every single one of these games. If they're just think about it: Bishop Gorman, John Bosco, Mater Day, Hoover, Alabama, Allen, all these people are on TV all the time. So there's money to be made there. And he's saying, if I have the best guys in the country playing, even for this short little window, there's going to be extra money there, even for those players to maybe get in on these TV deals.
Yeah.
Man, good Lord. All right. So keep that under your hat. But let me go ahead and talk about this next gentleman real fast, because he's coming in. He's very interesting. I was very lucky to meet him a few years ago, and it was because of this podcast. We were talking a lot about high school recruiting, and I actually had some studs on my team that were warranted his attention to where he needed to come to JP2 and see some of these guys. So Mr. Tom Lemming is going to be joining the show in just a moment when I bring him in here. And what you need to know is this guy is magnificent Okay, he's been in movies. He has his own magazines called the Lemming Report. You guys need to check it. And people think it's the Bible when it comes to recruiting. It is thick. It is big. It has every state, all the stuff. He travels around all over the country and finds and ranks and do articles. He's on CBS. They do shows. He has his own stuff where he's talking about recruiting. I've actually watched and seen some of the stuff where he's had, athletes that have ended up at Alabama or Clemson or Ohio State because he is well known like that. So when it comes to recruiting, this is the guy. You got to know who he is and what he does, because this gentleman right here on our screen, Mr. Tom Lemming, welcome to the show, sir. I'm so glad that you're here and you can make the time to come be with us. Thank you.
Yeah. It's good to be on, George. Yeah, I just been driving around the country. What I do, this is my 45th year, so I try to see everybody in person, like I saw your guys. And I've been in Texas 4 times already this year, and I had an 11,000-mile drive in 22 days where I got caught in big snowstorms and mudslides out in the West. Wyoming was horrible, and but it's like that almost every year if I try to go north before April, and I did that in March. So I'm taking note of that, and I'm going to head south more early on.
All right. Well, thank you for taking some time here. And so, I wanted to ask you, I don't know how much you got to look and understand what this league about, and if I need to repeat some of it, I can. But it's basically AAU football in short, right? That they're gonna play 6 weeks of football in the spring, right on top of spring football in a lot of these areas, 8 different states, 12 different cities. Okay. And so from a recruiting standpoint, the reason why I wanted to have you here is really kind of talk about does this really help or hurt the kid, or does it help or hurt college when they're looking at these guys as well, based upon the time frame? Because they're saying they can capitalize on this recruitment trail because now guys will actually be playing games when they can be out there. So what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think it helps. It helps the players because, they're all in a bunch at certain schools. There aren't that many schools, and the college coaches like less workload when it comes to go visiting all these other places. So I think in the long run, it helps them. And a lot of the big schools you're talking about, I don't know if you mentioned St. Francis in Maryland, but I do know that Biff Poggi had been talking to me for years about doing something like this, but he could never really pull it off. And now he's head coach at Charlotte, so he doesn't have the time. But I do know that that's part of the reason why he left another school in Baltimore, and then he moved over to St. Francis and really built it up where it's become more of a international school. You got guys from different states, just like IMG, where they just kind of take players from, but IMG takes established players. St. Francis actually works with them to build them up and make them players, a good number of them from the states of Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. So I do like that idea. I like the fact that, and you can name maybe at the most like 16 schools that out west. It's Bosco and it's Mater Dei and Bishop Gorman. I don't know if there's there used to be Eastside Catholic up in Washington. They've kind of slowed up, and now it's O'Dea. And then you got in the Midwest, not too many that you would say a dominant program, but in the South, a ton of them. Even North Jersey, though, would have Bergen Catholic and St. Peter's Prep that would be dominant teams. And then you mentioned Hoover. I think St. Paul's Episcopal down in Mobile at times could be really good. And Aquinas in Florida, fantastic. They would definitely be one of them. Probably a couple of DC schools would also be, and then Good Counsel and maybe DeMatha. So you could come up with 16 easy. And you mentioned Allen, Texas, which is a perennial good team. There's other ones that'll come and go back, and like Denton Ryan lost their coach, so I think probably will be heading down a little bit. And then you've got Duncanville, which is an outstanding program with Coach Samples. You got North Shore. I really like Thurgood Marshall too, down in southwest part of the Houston suburbs. So there's so many. I would think the league could expand what you're talking about to 16 teams, and then a super league, and then you're going to get players in those areas wanting to play for those teams. So it'll be nothing but great football going head to head.
But do you think it's a problem though? Because what you're saying is one scenario, which I know they were looking at before, of actually just pulling the schools in, but they're not gonna do that. It's really more of pulling kids from each team to devise a all-star team. Those are my words, not someone else. Or where they say, "Hey, I want to pull from Allen, DeSoto, uh, Louisville, whatever, and have these 30 or 40 kids come together and play on this team outside of their high school league, like a basketball team,
Yeah.
AAU basketball team. Hey, they're pulling kids from every school. They go travel, they come back, they go back to school.
I see.
Whatever.
You would play in the spring, is what you're saying.
Yes, they
That would
would
be
play in the
that
spring.
would be a great for the college coaches and recruiters because obviously they're allowed to travel in the spring, at least parts of April and May. And if you have the league going on at that time, you've got every school in the country looking at those particular teams because they're loaded with the great players. So you're right, that would be good. Um, what about sponsors?
Yes, so he does have sponsors already. I mentioned one of them. So they are gonna. One of the things that they're saying that they're going to be offering these guys are the ability. It has to be passed and all across the states, but no cap sports, which is a NIL deal that works for colleges right now. I guess they're going to be helping these college athletes actually raise some money. He's mentioned about doing some type of other additional marketing, right, to be able to help them. You got to think of it like USFL, XFL, those kind of things that they're basically saying we're um, a way to promote you more than not. And this is a for-profit league, so if you think of IMG, they're a for-profit high school.
Yeah.
Most high schools are nonprofit. IMG's in it to make money, and he's in it basically. No, we're in it to make money, and our kids are going to make money too because we're going to offer you this. We got an NIL person to help you get deals. We're going to be marketing you. Maybe you get TV stuff. Maybe you, I don't know. So it's basically going to throw some money at the kids and say, if you come on over here, we got all the tools you need to enhance your brand. Okay,
Yeah.
you're a 4-star guy and you got 15,000 followers on Instagram. Well, we're going to try to help you get it to 30 or 40, where you can make more money.
Well, I think that's a great idea. If you could pull it off and get everything set, and I don't think there's anything that's an impossibility anymore. And when we started the U.S. Army game back in 2000, everybody kept saying the game's going to fall apart. And we did the first one in Dallas, and then that did fall apart. And then the Army came aboard, and the rest was history with it down there. But I remember the first couple of years, the first year, 2 out of every 3 players turned the game down. We don't, the state didn't want them going into a lot of states I know is Alabama, Mississippi, and Oklahoma, Michigan, Georgia wouldn't let their players in the game for the first few years. We didn't announce that because we were trying to make it say, oh, it's an all American game. But Megatron was one of the guys we want. He was my number one player in the country, and he wasn't allowed to play in the game, or else he would have had to forfeit his basketball career. But nowadays, I think all the rules are changing, and I do think something like this could really happen if it benefits the ball players. Like you say, they can make money off of it. Who's going to stop them? It's a free country, and I would say that if it's presented right, it would be a good idea, and I think it could definitely happen.
Well, this is it. So, Coach, I want you to speak on that. How do you feel about that, though, as a coach? We kind of talked about it a little bit, but just hearing that, does that raise another hair on the back of your neck saying, man, I'm a coach, though, and my guy is going to miss my spring football, or he's going to practice twice, or he's going to – now, I will say, to answer your question earlier that I said I was going to get to, they did say that this is not your typical spring football, so they want us to perceive it or look at it like an NFL mini camp. They're saying these guys, they don't need to be hitting. They're just going to go play. You're going to have high quality coaching. Whole lot. They don't need to be tackling in practice. You're going to tackle in the game, but we're going to be going through. So anyway,
I don't know that would. Yeah, it raises a lot of questions, especially splitting your players between your spring practices and someone else's practices. Um, but I mean, if it's presented right and it's beneficial for the kids and their future, I mean, it's a way for it to work.
Okay. So, Tom, what do you think about this? I'll ask you, and then I'm going to ask Mark. AAU football. What is it really time for this to happen? Are we just nervous and scared about it because of the amount of travel or hitting of kids? Or is it really something that's,
I
you
think
know,
the kids would be all for it because I've seen these kids. They do something. They're always doing something all summer long. Like I said before, you need sponsors because of the travel. You're talking about national teams. You're going maybe from Florida to California, so you'll need sponsors. But I always say now, never say never on anything because I've seen so many rules change. Who would have dreamed NIL? Who would have dreamed the way the portal is right now? Just a couple of years ago, seems like it's everything's happening as long as it's presented right. You got enough sponsors, you got enough people doing it. Because I think the ball players, they'll be all for everything. They got a lot of energy. They don't want to stop during the summer. They're doing stuff all the time. So, like you say, yeah, it is good if they're getting all these guys from different schools. The key would be to get the high school coaches on board. I know you mentioned Allen and DeSoto, and maybe Duncanville, Denton Ryan, a lot of the Metroplex schools. I don't know. I know those coaches. I don't know if they'd be up for it, but I guess you just never know. And then, in Houston, James Williams down at Thurgood Marshall or Coach K over at North Shore, guys that I always see every year and all that. And they like to have complete control of their kids. So that would be probably the biggest stumbling block of everything, getting them on board.
well, those coaches, they here in Texas, they did bark very, very loudly when it first came out. That is not something they were very interested in. So, what about you? Just on the ideal of AAU football, Art? Do you think it's
Well,
okay?
I mean, it could be okay if for the kids because the kids are going to do what they're going to do anyways. It's going to be up to us adults, not even us, but like whoever's going to be running the league or being in charge of those kids to say, if it's too much for them, speak up on their behalf, protect them from themselves. But if it's going to benefit them, their lives, their families' lives, make some good money. I mean, I'm not a fan of AAU stuff, but if it's going to work out for the kids later on, I'm all for kids, getting a step up ahead in life.
Okay. So, Tom, can you talk to us a little bit about what the trends are with the transfer portal in college and how it's affecting high school recruiting, those seniors? I don't know all the data, but apparently I hear all the time that it's hurting the high school senior, particularly in football. But in a lot of sports, because everyone's going to recruit the transfer portal to get a more older and experienced person, so it's hurting there. So, and tie that into, does this help or hurt again that person, this league? Because they're saying, the prep league is saying that this will help combat some of that stuff with the transfer portal and really show the skills of these individuals. What do you
I
think?
think talking about getting the great ball players into that league, so I don't think they'll be affected. The great ones aren't, but I did notice a massive change this past year with at least a third of the top high school players not getting scholarships that they normally would have. Some maybe Big Ten players would have went down to the MAC. MAC players were going without scholarships. What I saw had to go as preferred walk-ons, and it's because of the transfer portal. There were over 4,000 guys in December, and there was no room for the high school kids by that time. And a good number of them were real upset. I saw some great players here in Chicago that normally would have gotten full rides, and now they're bouncing to Iowa State or Iowa, Wisconsin, or Northwestern when it comes to preferred walk-on, and it's a shame. So I think it's a big mess, and I would hope that the NCAA or even politicians would get involved to maybe at least cut it down a bit. And also, I think it's cutting down competition because quarterback-wise, especially, if you're a quarterback, all of them have big egos. That's the one, that and wide receiver, two ego positions. And I think you see those guys transfer more than anybody. The wide receivers, as soon as they're not getting the starting job, they're gone. I mean, before they used to fight for the job, and they didn't get it right away. They're going to fight, for it over the next year. Now they're all gone, quarterbacks especially. But you see that also with the wide receivers, those two spots, the ego spots, and they're gone. And I think it's really hurting competition now. And colleges sometimes struggle to find 3 quarterbacks for their team because so many of them are leaving and they don't have enough time to get them from the portal back in. So it's kind of crazy right now, but I do think that hopefully they can get it under control fairly soon. But I don't think it'll hurt your league, because you're talking about the great players who never have a problem getting scholarships. The top third never have a problem. It's the bottom third that has problems right now because of NIL. Because of the transfer portal.
All right. So he just took a shot at you too, Art, because aren't you an offensive coach? What's up with you guys in your offensive mind? Well, he called you a prima donna, man. You're a prima donna.
Hey, we like our names in the paper. It is what it is.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know. Do we have to consider that as a coach, or we can be objective enough to say, hey, maybe this is good enough for a player? Because there are some, as bad as we may think in certain areas, and I have to admit there are certain things that I don't like. There are certain things that I do like. But
what I've learned, just like having one way thinking never really progresses anything. I think welcoming in new ideas and new ways of doing things can help progress a lot of things, and maybe this is a different step of progression with football and where we're going to be going with football. Would definitely be interested to see how this whole 6-week spring Super League would play out. Definitely would like to see the teams. Mr. Lemming made a good point. There's so many teams. Just off the top of a head, how many teams are we missing? Not really think about that stuff. And I really think, going forward, seeing where this avenue could take us and could take you guys, because it's not going to affect me in New Mexico, but where it's going to take Texas, San Francisco, Dallas, DC area and all that. Sky's the limit. These markets for these kids are going to be all over them. And, with Twitter and social media, they could really promote themselves in different areas, not just in the fall, but also in the springtime.
You are absolutely right. So, Tom, you're traveling around the country. You go to a state like California, where NILs are legal for high school athletes. Do you see this being a trend where guys I've heard of some deals, some soccer players out there getting some really big deals, but is this where we're going with high school football for real? Where people are really going to start searching for the dollar?
I saw it a little bit in California. Remember the quarterback out of Northern California from Pittsburgh was taking $7 million from Miami. Then he switched for the $13 million from Florida. Then after he signed, Florida comes, so we don't have $13 million to give you after they promised him. So he went to Arizona State. I think at the time for nothing. They might have given him something since then, but I think because nothing's in writing, they just promised these kids a ton of money. I think A&M had done that last year, and it backfired on them. A&M had one of the most talented teams in the country, but they lost 7 games because it looked like team unity wasn't there when the freshmen are getting paid a lot more than the rest of the team. So you got to be real careful with all that stuff. And I think even though California, it's legal, I think a lot of the high school coaches have kind of tempered their Notre Dame's not really big on the NIL like USC or Oregon or Ohio State, but Notre Dame just got the best linebacker on the West Coast committed to him 2 days ago over Ohio State and USC, just because they were promoting something that's unusual, academics. So, yep. And they pushed the academic side of it. Obviously, it's Notre Dame too, so they'll have some money, but they're not in the big business with the NIL schools yet. Not like Georgia's. got a ton of money. So does A&M, so does Oregon, so does Oklahoma, USC, Ohio State, Alabama. Those are the schools and Tennessee that are pushing it the most.
Okay, excellent. So let me ask you guys these questions because we're getting closer down to the end of the show. Um, why? All right, you're gonna go first.
All right.
Why would a prep super league not work? What would cause it to fail?
Uh, I think two things. One would be the high school coaches in those states put their foot down and get some politicians involved and never let it see the day of light. And another one would be quarterback, just like the best quarterback of the nation. I think his name is Raiola. Just bouncing all over the place and being able to be eligible to play these games. I think with those two things, with free of transferring all over the place and high school coaches, I don't see why that's why it wouldn't work.
All right, good point, Tom.
Yeah, I think
what do you think?
Coach is right about that with the high schools maybe getting a little upset, maybe getting some legislature where there couldn't be, it wouldn't be allowed. And you're right about Dylan Raiola. I've known Dylan since he was a little kid. His dad, back in the old days, the USA Today would fly me out to Hawaii. I always felt justified. I put one player from Hawaii on the USA Today team, and it was Dylan's dad who wound up playing, I think, 16 years in the NFL. Wow. And Dylan was playing first in Texas, if you remember, as a sophomore, as a junior in Arizona.
Chandler
commits to Georgia. Now he's playing in Beaufort, Georgia. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough for me in the magazine, tough to keep track of, especially Florida kids. Some of them have been at 4 different high schools, which doesn't mean a lot for loyalty, but they just bounce from one because of their AAU coaches. So you got to go here. This is going to benefit you more. A lot of times it benefits the AAU coach more than it does the player, but they get bouncing around. And I don't think that's a good thing either. And hopefully they'll maybe legislate that. Obviously in Florida, it's open enrollment, so you can just bounce from school to school. But I do think they should kind of keep it under control because it is getting a little out of hand. And just for me, because I can't keep track of where they're going. I'll write about them one week at one school, the next week they're at another school. So
that's right. I think there will be. I'm going to give you two pieces of that on what my take is. I think you guys are right. I think, in one sense, I think you guys are right. I think the power of high school football coaches, in particular, in a lot of these areas, they speak loudly. I think some kids could be intimidated. Their parents would think they're going to get blackballed and not be able to play anywhere, if they're not showing any loyalty to the school because of what you just said, move from school to school to school to school. That could be an issue. On the other side of that, I think it would be hard for them to do that because the rules don't apply to baseball, basketball, softball, and all these other teams there where they're able to go play. Now, I know we deal with it at JP2. Man, kid want to go play, you name the sport or whatever. And now it's not on the. It's always in the off season. They do the AAU teams pretty much operate in the off season, except for soccer. Soccer's not. We have to move a lot of our games in soccer because of those big tournaments that they have, and those kids are gonna go to they'll sit out of our game to go to those tournaments. It's kind of a crazy mindset to me, but it actually happens. So I don't know why that wouldn't happen in football, where you can't really legislate, or you're going to have some kind of discrimination case to say, oh, so everybody else can have an AAU team, but we can't. That could be a problem, right? So the other side, that was the negative piece. Why will it work? Why will it work, Art?
Oh, why will it work? No, the new day of age. NIL money is a big driving factor for a lot of these kids, making as much money as they can, as young as they can. Makes a lot of sense to these kids. And especially some of these talents come from these rural areas where money's not just falling from trees. And the exposure piece, if it's not just gearing toward 4- and 5-star athletes, and they're looking for the 3 2s and maybe a one that could maybe find himself on the field. I could potentially get him a scholarship or an invite to some sort of camp on an institution that kid wasn't planning on. So that's one way. A few ways I think that it could work or it will work.
All right, Tom, what do you say? How will it work?
I think it'll definitely work if the players, and they're all going to be for it because it gives them more exposure. If you can get sponsors to pay the money to get the kids to travel back and forth, which I don't think could be a problem. You get agents and a lot of other people involved to do that, or even the agents that are controlling the 7-on-7 coaches can be part of that too. So I don't think that would be a problem. And I think it's just making sure that the high school coaches don't have complete control of the players, because they're the ones that, like Coach said, that they could actually cause a lot of problems, especially if the player, thinks he's not going to be able to play. Might be not, or there might be some legislature saying that, okay, he's got to sit out half the year if he plays at the other team. So, but I think it could be done. A lot of people put their heads together. These AAU tournaments, having a league like that play a few games, that could be perfect. And the exposure would be unbelievable because, believe me, I work for CBS Sports Network. Us, Fox, ESPN, everybody try to pick up those games. When you have so many great players on both teams, it's money in the bank.
See, that's what I'm saying, and that's why I think will work for those reasons as well. And they got to think about it. I do pay attention. I ask a lot of our AAU coaches that I even have at my school, how much do they pay to play something? And kids are paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to be on some traveling volleyball team, soccer team, whatever. They are elite. Sometimes they aren't, but there are some elite ones that are doing it because that's how they gotta get recruited ultimately, and things of that nature. So I don't think they're going to be charging football guys like that. Apparently, what they're saying, but from what I've heard, there's some pretty good financial backers behind this to try to make it go because of what you just said. They see TV money. They see the opportunity to show 5 or 6 games in the spring, with the best athletes in the country competing against each other. I think they probably can buy some airline tickets to get them from Dallas to Houston or Dallas to Atlanta. Pretty easy on a charter plane and make it all up if CBS, ESPN, or whoever they cut deals with to broadcast this. It probably could be good. And you guys nailed it. We're all greedy nowadays. We all need money. We all want to do it. We all got to do something. Yep. If I can go play a little sport and tweet something or show something and do a little picture, I do it myself. I tweet and post all the time, and I'm not even getting paid like that. But these kids, guys, I have to tell you, one for the story, that I'm going to let y'all beat it and get out of here. I knew the world had changed. When I was at a football game. I was coaching. I normally stand by the tunnel just like everybody else, and I would run out with them sometimes. Or I might just go down there and wait. But, I like to trot out there as well. One of our players actually had his phone in the tunnel, ran out with it, showing everybody behind him. Beautiful clip. Now, it pissed me off at the time because I'm like, man, you ain't even focused. You ain't thinking about the game. You're doing this. But then when I saw it, I was like, holy shit, this is freaking amazing, because it showed energy and hype and all that. And that probably could have went viral and made the guy some money at some point in time before all this kind of hit. But that's our day and age now. They're all trying to find that click, something. And if they can be on a plane, they go play a game every week. And someone's helping them market and making things, and they got some marketing department that's jazzing them up. That's why it's going to work. For sure. So, all right. So, closing comments. Art, you got anything you need to say about this?
Well, I'm definitely going to be all ears now and all fingers, because that's the only way I could get this information. I'm going to be reading up on this, keep bothering you about it to see where it's at. I mean, it's going to be very interesting. If it happens, I mean, I guess I'll be glued to a TV for 6 weeks. And if it doesn't, well, I guess I got to figure out what to do with the next 6 weeks of my life other than football.
Yeah, that's right. Tom, what about you?
Well, for me, August 30th, I start traveling again. I get my magazine up before that. So I'll keep my ear to the ground and find out what's going on. And normally I do have the pulse of what's going on recruiting wise, because I'm seeing everybody consistently, different parts of the country and all that. And I'll be able to see what's going on too. And I always got to stop by the powerhouse schools like Bosco and out in the West Coast. The two best schools in the country really are Bosco and Mater Dei, because LA, in my mind, is the best area from Bakersfield down to San Diego for talent. The best area, then you got the Metroplex where you guys are, South Florida, which is not as good as it used to be, and Atlanta, which is getting better. And one area you wouldn't know, where I live, Chicago's got 51 guys in the NFL, which a lot of people, because there's so many pro teams here in Chicago, nobody cares. But in the draft last year, the number 1 state was Florida. Number 2 state was Texas. Number 3, Georgia. Number 4, California. Number 5 was Chicago. Not even a state, but we had 13 guys drafted. People don't realize it because no one comes to the games here. They'd rather go to a Bears game or a Bulls game or a Blackhawks game. And the high school players, I remember watching years ago, two guys, Chris Zorich and Russell Maryland, played against each other. It was 1985 or 86. And I remember going to the game, and there was maybe 20 people in the stands. That was it. If that game was taking place in Dallas, there'd be 12,000 or so. You know, there's a lot of people going to the game, but up here, there's a lot of good talent, but no one really cares. And that's why a lot of people go, the Sun Belt. Plus, there's no spring ball up here, so maybe you get the players. That would be another area for you to hit in another story. But the Midwest and the East, you get all the top players there to join those 6 teams, because there is no spring ball in the northern part of the country.
There is no spring ball in y'all states because it is still cold in the spring.
That's part of it. They said, well, we want the players to have the full experience so they can play spring sports and all that. And not anymore. These kids are focused on football.
That's right. Well, you guys need to go pick up the Tom Lemming report. It is absolutely amazing. Check him out. And I am going to go ahead and ask him right now on the show that in next spring, when this launches, I'm going to need you to come back on Teague's Take so you can tell us what the trends are and what's happening, because you're going to be around these guys and seeing, and they're going to be making decisions whether they will or will not play in this league. And I'm sure you'll have a little bit of insight on that just from talking to everybody.
Anytime, Coach.
So we do appreciate it very much. It's been a great one. Remember, we're going to have Brian Woods on, the founder of this Prep Super League, in 2 weeks, August the 9th. You guys are going to come hear it, because you're going to hear it right from his mouth. We talked about it. We'll give our opinions, but he's going to tell you exactly what he feels and what he is. And I don't know what he's planning on doing with it. So I am very excited to hear about that, because I still got a lot of questions that I feel like I need to ask, that you guys even brought that up. Who are the sponsors? What about these injuries? Can it really, how much money are we talking about for these guys? Do we got deals with CBS and ESPN already that we don't know about? How many guys are going to be on the team? There's a lot of stuff, right? So, Tom, I thank you. Art, I thank you.
Take care.
You guys a little bit. Appreciate it.
Bye, Coach. Coach. Bye.
See you later, Tom.